a blue screen, blue curtain. Go live on YouTube. What's up, buddy? Okay. Enjoy that. Hello, welcome to Derps Talk About Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
And I am your co-host, Buddy.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about Pepsi Man! But before we do that, buddy, why don't you tell the folks at home what it is we do on this podcast?
On this podcast, we like to talk about games. But you know what? Listen, we take a break, okay? Everybody's got a little pop culture in them. And one of our favorite pop culture pastimes is watching every fucking comic book movie that ever comes out, apparently. And that includes Disney's, Marvel's, Sony's, Madam Web, a Spider-Man story brought to you by Pepsico. Which is truly Morbius 2.0. Honestly, I actually think the meme potential for this movie is so high, and I can't believe that it hasn't. I guess just its Morbin time was so good as like the pinnacle meme to kind of like pin something onto that like it transcended all of the rest of this. Madam Web is so dumb and so funny in unintentional ways, but like it's hard to like you can't like make like a Twitter post about the director's camera work, which made me fucking nauseous. Like,
yeah, no, I mean, I was gonna say like part of the thing with Morbius is that like the memes weren't actually from the movie; they were people inventing things that didn't happen in the movie, right? Like we talked about this, right? There were memeable moments in the movie, right? The stinky pinky thing, right? Like. No one noticed that because no one actually watched the fucking movie. We were the only two people on the fucking planet that watched the movie. Right?
That actually watched the movie. True. That's true. That's real.
But let's give, I guess, our pre-spoiler impressions. Controversially, I think I enjoyed this movie more than most of the movies I've seen, superhero movies I've seen in the past year. I don't know if I'd say the movie's good. Like the plot devices are stupid, and like most of nothing makes sense. But like. There was a story structure that I recognized and like compelled me at least in the short term, right? Like, you know.
Wow. Like earnestly.
Yeah, like I found myself I didn't find myself checking my watch nearly as often as I have during some of the other Marvel movies. And maybe it's just because like everything was kind of unclear or because, you know, the stuff that was happening was like relative like there you know, there was a real danger and that was like imminent for most of the movie, and so there was tension there, and that like you know is at least something to like keep me entertained, right? And like to your point, like there, like you said, like there are camera shots that weren't great. There was like some asinine dialogue. I don't know if Dakota Johnson's a bad actress or if she was given bad direction, but like it just like sounded like the words she was saying was like whatever. I thought the ending was incredibly stupid, but like. Moment to moment, I was like, I get this, and maybe I've been watching too much Clone Wars because like it felt like a series of like short episodes that didn't have enough time for the plot to develop to get this together, or something like that. But
okay,
what are your pre-spoiler impressions?
If you're the kind of person who wanted to go see 2019's Cats, okay, you probably want to go see Madam Web. It's a very similar. So bad, it's good, just so wild, the decisions that are getting made. There are so many things I just like want to like talk about on a like a how did this happen level? Like how did somebody think of this? Just like the logic of it. I don't typically like getting into that, you know, like I obviously want to talk about like themes and characters or whatever. And funnily enough, that stuff actually kind of exists in this movie. But like the stuff that matters to me about this movie is that it's a movie set in 2003 that makes a major plot beat center around Britney Spears Toxic. You know, it's just the wild logic of including inserts of Dakota Johnson's character ripping the license plate off of the car she stole and crashed into a building and then continues to drive around for more than 1 week
presumably parks that car at the airport, which I guess is a must.
At the airport, she parks it at a taxi cab that she stole. She parks it at the airport for a week while she is wanted for kidnapping. All
right, we're getting into spoilers.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm getting into spoilers. Whatever the case may be, that's my reading of this movie. If you wanted to go see Cats 2019 in the theaters because it sounded like such a wild time, okay, go see Madam Web. It's worth it on that level. Outside of that, it's pretty soulless in my estimation. It takes, honestly, it really pissed me off in a couple of ways that are like specific to me, that are like comic book guy ways. And frankly, I probably think that there are some good Steelman arguments against the argument that I'm going to make later about that stuff. But whatever the case may be, the movie pissed me off on that kind of level, but I enjoyed it so much on the other kind of level that I don't know. That's my sort of recommendation.
I didn't know anything about Madam Web going into this. I maybe I'll say it in the spoilers thing, but there's a moment at the end where a thing happens that was like, oh, I vaguely recognize that kind of like silhouette, right? It's like, oh, I guess that's that character. That's what Madam Web is. I will. Okay, here's your spoiler warning. Spoilers. I don't think it matters that much. But
I also don't think it matters at all. Let's talk about it. What is the silhouette?
So when she's in the wheelchair with the blindfold on, right? I'm like,
yes, okay.
I've seen something like that before, right? So I vaguely am aware that something like that exists, but I don't know. I also don't.
This is why this movie is such a wild movie, because it's sort of like, how when Teen Titans go to the movies, they go to the premiere of the new Batman movie, right? And Robin really wants his own movie, and the trailers play before the movie, and he keeps thinking the trailers are about him, but it's just wilder and wilder side characters to the Batman mythos. Like at first it's Alfred, and then it's Ace the Bat Hound, and then it's the Bat car, it's the Batmobile, right? It's sort of like an executive at Sony is doing that, but with Spider-Man. Madam Web is a quadriplegic blind mutant with precognitive abilities who sometimes helps Spider-Man by like predicting the future and giving him like cryptic kind of, fortune teller advice, right? That's the extent of her. That's like the extent of her character. She has a really compelling silhouette. She's kind of on this machine. It looks like she's in the center of a spider's web, but it's like the machine that's like dealing with like her muscular dystrophy or something like that, right? She wears is like blindfold across her face. She just has like an iconic kind of like look, but like really at the end of the day, she's like an oracle type character who Spider-Man will go to sometimes when he needs to understand some aspect of like the plot that is like foreshadowing the future. That's really all like Madam Web is. So the fact that this is like her, or it is just an even more wild decision than Morbius, right? Morbius is at the very least a true Spider-Man villain, and you can understand, oh, I'm making a movie out of this Spider-Man villain that like we haven't really seen, but like I get it. Morbius is a real Spider-Man villain. Madam Web is just like, who the fuck chose this character to like make a whole Spider-Man movie?
I think the point is this is supposed to like weirdly be like a prequel to like a Spider-Woman movie starring Sydney Sweeney, right? I guess.
I'm sorry. Was Sydney Sweeney in this movie?
She's Spider-Girl, isn't she?
She's one of the Spider-Girls? Oh my god, am I fucking insane?
I mean, I'm not great with actresses, but like I saw some.
Oh my god.
Yeah, she's Julia.
That's her. Yeah. Wow. Holy fuck. I didn't even realize that. So I know that she's like famous or whatever, but that's wow. Okay, fair enough.
The only reason I know that is because there were a bunch of meme photos of her and Dakota Johnson standing on like the red carpet for the premiere, right? Because they're let's say their figures are quite different, and people were thirst posting about it. So
oh my god. Wow. Okay. Well, fair enough. People were thirst posting about it.
I mean, they were, right? Like,
sure.
But yeah. Yeah, and like, I don't know. So is in the comics she's a mutant and not like I also saw something on Twitter about like magical Spider-Man was a thing at some point, like that. This.
Oh, this is another piece of the thing that also this is the part that really bothers me. The villain is tied into this. Ezekiel Sims. I'm sorry. Is that might be what you're referring to about magical Spider-Man
so
stuff?
I thought someone say something about magical Spider. Like there was a period of time where instead of being like radioactive Spider, somehow Spider-Man's powers were like revealed to be more tied to like a magical thing. Like I think I've seen like outside of this, I've seen things that's like like the spider totem or something, or like the spider.
Yep, this is all Ezekiel stuff, and this is why this pissed me off. Okay, so the story here, in a very famous comic written by one of my favorite writers, J. Michael Straczynski, who I've referenced a bunch before. He's the guy that did that Thor run that I've talked about a bunch of times. J. Michael Straczynski was the head of Spider-Man for a long time, and he has a lot of really, really iconic stuff that happens in his long run. It's maybe like 15 years or something, from like the 90s into the early 2000s. He does the Spider-Man run where Peter Parker becomes a school teacher, and he actually stops a school shooter. Like this was a couple years after Columbine. He did like the 9/11 stuff with Spider-Man, just like all that. Like this is his run. He's like really good. He does it with John Romita Sr., who's like another famous artist. During this run, there is a character who pops up called, I guess we'll start with the villain. The villain is named Morlun. Morlun is an energy like vampire guy. But the thing that Morlun hunts are magical people who have connections to like totemic animals, right? And Spider-Man meets this guy, Ezekiel, right? Who is a businessman in his 50s. He's just hanging out on a wall. He's in a business suit, but he has no shoes on. He's like barefoot, and obviously his like hands are free. And Spider-Man and Ezekiel kind of like cryptically suggests to Spider-Man that, hey, maybe you didn't get your powers from the radioactive spider. Maybe you got your powers from the spider, and the radiation just happened to kill it. In fact, the radiation didn't really matter, right?
Yeah.
This starts kind of like a thing in Spider-Man's brain where he's like, oh, maybe I am essentially a magic superhero rather than sort of like an atomic superhero kind of thing, right? At the end of that storyline, Spider-Man actually kills Morlun with the radiation that is like part of his blood. He is sort of a false totem or whatever. It's like the totem, he is a totem, but the totem part of him is corrupted by the radiation, which is why Morlun can't truly feed on him. And sort of later down the line, you learned that Ezekiel sort of manipulated. Ezekiel was the one who Morlun was coming to kill, but Ezekiel kind of manipulates Spider-Man to kill Morlun for him.
I see.
And so this is his quasi basis for villainhood. But he's in the comic, he is a good guy. He is a supporting character who kind of offers Spider-Man like a lot of interesting advice and gives him a totally different perspective on his powers, on his kind of place in the world, on all of this other sort of stuff. And fans loved him. He is a really cool character. And one of the cool things about Ezekiel is they didn't explain his powers. There is a moment where Spider-Man goes, hey, how did you learn all of this stuff anyway? And there's a panel that shows Ezekiel as a young man tied to like a giant like Mayan disc or something with like blood, like ritualistic blood stuff cut into his chest and blood like running out of him or whatever. And he says like, that's a story I'll tell you at another time kind of thing. And the kind of implication is that he was like part of this like, dark. And this eventually gets like added into the lore by another like writer way down the line. It's like part of his like dark backstory that like he was like kidnapped by this whatever like Amazon tribe and done all this stuff too or whatever. But the point is that this feels like a character assassination of Ezekiel, who is a truly really interesting and unique character. Not quite a good guy, but also not quite a bad guy, right? Yes, he manipulates Spider-Man to his own ends, and that's lying and bad and selfish and stuff like that. But also, like at the end of the day, like Morlun is a bad guy and all this other sort of stuff. There's more stuff about him. Ezekiel is very interesting, and this version of him is so boring it bothers me.
You know what? That's totally fair. If I had to guess, I think there was probably somebody who was like, maybe we don't make the Amazon indigenous tribe evil people who like, force blood rituals onto people, right? Or something like that. Especially because, you have like a short period to put this together. Is it in are they, is Madam Web connected to Ezekiel Sims in any way at all in the comics lore?
No, Madam Web is from kind of the early 90s. All this Ezekiel stuff happens in the early 2000s. And Madam Web exists for this time, but like, you know, like I said, she's like a very like side supporting character. Maybe there is, you know, just because like I'm not an exhaustive encyclopedia of like Spider-Man knowledge, but that stuff with Ezekiel is like famous. Also, that stuff with Ezekiel is complicated because people felt like Ezekiel's character in the comics where he became more villainous was like character assassination,
I
right?
see.
This happens from time to time when like a really new, interesting character is kind of created and then later changed or revealed to be something else. There's a character who's like this called, have you ever heard of Zorn? Have we ever talked about Zorn?
No, we have not talked about Zorn.
XORN. Yeah, Zorn is the most perfect example of this. Zorn is a character creating Grant Morrison's X-Men run. He has a big metal head because his mutation is that he was born with a dwarf neutron star in his head. And so he needs this like metal contraption in order to stop himself from becoming a black hole or whatever. But he's essentially like a Buddhist monk. Everybody really loved Zorn. He was like really interesting. He added a lot of like kind of color and flavor and like philosophy to sort of the X-Men. And then you later find out that it was all a ruse by Magneto, who was just using this metal contraption in his head to like shield his thoughts from, you know, Charles Xavier so he could infiltrate like the school. And everybody hated this plot twist because it was like Zorn was a really cool, interesting character, and to just make him Magneto in disguise like sucks, right? And the same thing happened with Ezekiel. Ezekiel was a really cool, interesting character who kind of is this like, you know, supporting figure. You're not quite sure if he's good or bad. He's kind of like, you know, mysteriously motivated. And then, oh, actually, it turns out that he's like, I don't know, like a huge piece of shit, and then he like dies or something like that. That's like the stuff that happens with Ezekiel. And they kind of like, they didn't take any of the first part where like, you know, he's a smart, interesting guy who is giving like cryptic information or like offering a new perspective on like troubled Spider-Man's life or whatever. This is why Ezekiel is like a good, fun character. And they just take him being like a dick later on, like a self-interested, I guess, like asshole later on as to be his characterization. And in this movie, he sucks and is like completely boring and one-dimensional, and he's not even like fun in the way that Matt Smith was fun in the Morbius movie.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of like weirdness in this movie. Like, I don't know. Like, where do you want to start with this? Like,
Well, I mean, one of the weird things that happens for him, which I find very funny, is he goes to the opera, he picks up a woman, he brings that woman back to his apartment to sleep with her. Then he wakes up in the middle of the night from this wild dream, explains the whole dream to his one night stand, who is clearly like, what the fuck? And then reveals that he actually kidnapped her so that he could get access to her NSA super secret sneaky camera tech to monitor people all over the globe. I was just like, what on earth is happening at all times?
so I don't know. Maybe I was being too generous with the movie, but like I was with you. I was like, what the fuck? Who the fuck sits and listens to this until he mentions the NSA thing? And the thing that filled in my mind is that like, oh, she's clearly she's clearly doing this on purpose, right? Like she's an agent investigating him, right? Because nobody knows what he's about, and he knows too, and he's turned that around on her, and that's what happened. So like, it didn't make sense until that line popped in, and then like that filled into my brain that worked, right? Like that made sense. Yes, it was wild, but it was wild with enough of a twist that it worked for me.
I get, I guess fair enough. I'm surprised this movie worked so well for you.
I mean, like I said, I don't think it's good, but like I had fun with it, right? Like, her powers don't make any sense. Is it supposed to be that like she's, projecting for, like she's predicting things in the future and then she snaps back? Because like it's initially presented as if she like goes back in time, right? Like, and initially it's like pretty clearly tied to like sounds, right? Like that's the whole toxic thing is like the peak of this, right? It's like a balloon pops, right? Like the train screeches. There's like a loud sound. There's like a loud sound, which is toxic, right? Like, and that resets her somehow. I was like, oh, that's going to be a thing. And then it's completely abandoned at the end of the movie, where she just kind of like, I don't know, becomes like fucking Doctor Strange and like astral projects herself to 4 different places. Like, I guess. I don't know. Like, what are Madam Web's powers in the comics? Like, is it
She can
just
see that is accurate. She can like see the future, right? And I understand where this kind of comes from because the spider sense is sort of a little bit of that,
right?
right? When like the spider sense gets described in these kinds of terms that it's like a very low level of like precognition.
Yeah, it seems like Madam Web is like by design, like Spider-Man with the spider sense turned up to 11 and the physical stuff turned down to 0, right? Like she's
Yeah, yep.
um and so that makes sense. The thing that's weird to me is that like it's not like the she experiences it in a way where it's like I guess she only ever retries anything once, but it like for those first times it feels like she's like traveling back in time, right? Like that she could try it again if she wanted to. But like that she also doesn't know that until like is she having a vision and she doesn't realize she's having a vision? Until like it snaps her back. Is that what's supposed to be the case?
Just gonna say in the chat, should just do that. That's so Raven eye zoom, so you know she's the future. Honestly, they do zooms like that. One of probably my biggest complaint about this movie is actually just the raw direction.
Sure.
There's a lot of stuff happening, and typically I actually like to praise this kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know. I the direction in this movie is very heavy-handed. There's a lot of whip pans and zooms and stuff that I found to be pretty disorienting. Like I said, it kind of like made me nauseous in ways. Part of it is also there's sort of a like a it, I don't even know how to explain this in like podcast terms. There's the thing called the 180 rule, which is that when you're shooting against like a flat plane, you can't cross the plane, right? You have to always shoot. You can only shoot things from a semicircle because if you shoot one thing from two opposite angles, it's very disorienting. And there's a lot of moments like that in this where it's just like something that you expect to come out of the right side of the frame comes out of the left side of the frame, which is like this is like the disorienting kind of stuff, right? You watch her move towards a car and she's going left to right, and then when she gets in the car she's going right to left, right? And that's just like, wait, what? That's it doesn't like the fluidity of that kind of motion is like really bad, really awful. And then there's also just like a lot of things. There's a lot of focus work that's really bad. There's a lot of I guess I would call them like narrow, like a wide angle lens keeps everything in a frame focus, right? And you have depth of field, which is stuff in the forefront of the camera is in focus, stuff in the back of the camera is in focus. When you have narrow lenses, only a specific planes, like only the front of the lens is going to be in focus, the back of the lens is going to be blurry, the back of the frame rather is going to be blurry. There's a lot of like focus stuff, and I was just like, what is the point of any of this? I don't understand. It was wild, and it was wild, and I really hated it.
Part of me wonders, do you think she was like trying to ape Sam Raimi? Like she was trying to like call back to the original Spider-Man movies?
Oh, interesting.
Because like obviously I don't think it has that flavor to it. Necessarily, like I don't think she quite hits it, but like I could feel I don't know. I saw like a short clip of like an interview where she talked about watching a bunch of like the Sony canon to prepare for this movie. And I was wondering if like, you know, like some of that stuff like feels very, very Sam Raimi to me. In like in form, if not in like total like adaptation. Like she missed the mark maybe a little bit. I forgot the director's name, but the director's one, which is why I'm saying she. Yeah. Also, like, you know, I don't know. Just from like a plotting level, there's a through line, but it also requires a lot of kind of like people kind of accepting things in a way that I found very implausible, right? Like, you know, these three girls don't have any reason to believe that this guy is after her, right? Like we know it because we see, you know, Cassandra Webb's vision, right? Like, but like they don't know that. As far as they know, she's after the guy's after her, and he's, you know, using them as body shields, right? Like the scene where he like takes out the police officers. It's like, why did he take out the police officers and not them? He doesn't care about getting them. He wants to kill them, right? Like, so he could just like punt them into like the, you know, into the trains and his job would be done. And that stuff's like kind of like forgivable. Like a lot of this is like right on the edge of like cinema sins level stuff, right? It's like characters acting stupidly in a way that is like on the border of a thing that I would think is reasonable, right? Like them walking to the diner, reasonable, right? Them dancing on top of the diner table, not so much.
Oh my god, I have this whole thing about the diner. But I want to say in the police officers for a second. Because the police officers thing is also truly wild if you kind of like there's just like a lot of stuff that's sort of insisted by the movie and I felt no sort of justification for. And it's one of those things that I have no idea how to control, right? Because there are movies that I frankly think are worse about this in some ways, but I give more of a pass to because they create a world where I'm willing to accept that, right? And I've talked a lot about like having an ironclad suspension of disbelief. So it's like crazy to me that I was so triggered on so many levels on these like suspension of disbelief issues. Because what happens is she gets in a train going to Poughkeepsie. All fucking place. Poughkeepsie. Fuck. She gets in a train going to Poughkeepsie. There are these 3 girls in the train. She has 3 separate visions of the guy coming and killing the 3 girls. She then runs up to them, insists that a man is coming to kill them, right? Including stealing the skateboard of one of the 3 girls in order to get the 4 of them off the train. She then sees him like running out of the train and like tracking her movements. One of the girls mentions kidnapping in passing. They go into and through another train and come out the other side. All this is 90 seconds. And then she's getting arrested by cops as if where did the cops come from? How did they know that any of this was happening? What are the connections to the cops on platform B to the one sentence that was made on platform A towards kidnapping, which wasn't in and then she gets bailed out of being arrested by the cops by the guy who wants to kill these 3 girls, and so he starts beating up the cops who are locking down the woman who it's just like none of that made any semblance of sense. And I understood like I don't know, I guess it's like a stakes raising thing. I want to say that I understand that like the point of that is to like raise the stakes and have it be like a twisty turny kind of like moment where you don't know who to trust or you don't know what's going on. But I was just like, man, what the fuck is going on? This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, I absolutely, it feels like maybe they like wrote themselves into a corner or something, right? Like that they needed a way to get out of that. And like they didn't have any better thing to do other than just kind of like, well, he'll attack the cops because he assumes that they're going to be protecting the kids or something, right? And they just kind of go with it.
Yeah, it's like the taxi cab is another good example of it.
Yeah.
Right? The taxi cab, they're running from this guy, okay? So she steals a taxi cab. Okay, steals a taxi cab, gets these girls in the cab, and is driving them throughout the city. And you might expect that she ditches the car. No, all she does is she drives the taxi cab back to her house. She rips off the license plates as if that's going to make it okay that someone's driving a taxi cab around with no license plates. And then later
hold on for 1 second, because
Yeah.
she finds a crowbar-shaped piece of scrap metal sitting there as if like she expected it to be there. And she rips off the license plates.
It's a precog power.
She rips off the license plates and leaves them there. It's not like she like brings them.
She just tosses them aside in the parking lot outside her apartment.
Yeah.
Right? And she is being identified. This is the other thing that's like wild or whatever. So the spider goes and beats up all these cops on the platform, right? Ezekiel goes and beats up these cops on the platform. They're driving away, and on the radio, she hears them talking about this altercation taking place, right? And nowhere is mentioned the spider or whatever. The only thing that's mentioned is her, this like early 30s like woman or whatever. And I was just sitting there and I was like, how often does the radio in New York City get interrupted because a minor crime took place somewhere? That never happens. It's completely unreasonable. And it would be insanely unreasonable. And I know that I should be thinking about these logistics, but for some reason I was like, it's also like 3 minutes after this altercation took place. So what happened? A cop who just got beat up by a black spider guy goes up, radios to base, describes the woman he was arresting and not the spider, and then base goes, let's get this on the radio as soon as possible. Somebody calls fucking Z100 or whatever, interrupts, like the morning show to go, we have a breaking news bulletin. I'm just like, what is the logic? This makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, like if it had been like even like 10 minutes later, right? Like I could have believed it as like, it's like, news on the sevens or whatever, right? Like type of thing where like, it's like, oh, and it's still ongoing, right? Or like, I guess it's supposed to be before cell phones. You can't really do this, but like have like an Amber Alert, like, peel out on somebody's phone, right? Like, I don't know. Like I had less trouble with the cop, like, to your point, like, it doesn't make any sense that they identify her over anything else. But, like, I guess I believe that, like, the cop gets kicked off the platform and no one saw the spider guys. Just like, I guess it was that woman that, like, threw them off the platform, right? Like, somebody has to deduce it after the fact, right? Like, what happened?
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? I guess, like, yeah. I feel bad. I hate these arguments. I think these arguments are dumb, right? This is not my argument that the movie is bad. The movie is bad for other reasons, right? This stuff to me is like wild. This is what made it funny.
Speaking of the logistics, apparently she immediately drives either over the George Washington Bridge or through the Lincoln Tunnel to the woods in New Jersey, I guess.
Yeah, they named the town in New Jersey, and I was wondering what it was. Do you remember what it was? It was like Clifton?
Clifton's too close. Clifton is like
out into the woods.
Yeah, I would say so. Clifton is so. I know this because so we'll talk about this in the back half. But I was at MetLife Stadium on Saturday, and I ate in Clifton on the way to MetLife Stadium. So it's like 15 minutes up the road from MetLife Stadium, like on Route 3, right? Like it is still within like the kind of like major suburbs of New York City band. And like I'm sure that there's woods somewhere up there, but nothing that looks kind of like what they put up, right? Like I would believe it if it was a diner on the highway and like there was just like a pocket of wood somewhere that they found, but like not like that looked like like fucking rural Pennsylvania. Some Jersey boys talk about how close NYC is. Yes, unironically, right? Like that's like and that's like what, a half hour to 45 minutes outside of the city, and like I'll be back in 3 hours. I mean, I feel like there's like a joke here about like New York City traffic that doesn't make any sense, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, the fact that they smash cut from her hearing her own name coming over the radio to the random woods of fucking New Jersey, apparently, where she lets the girls out, tells them to stay put, and then goes back to her apartment to like do all this stuff. What the heck? It short circuits my brain. And then this is on the logic. Okay, this is the part that like truly ended me. Okay, this is the part that fucked with my brain in ways that are just so hard to describe. Okay, so we're in the woods. The girls decide they want to go to a diner. So they walk half a mile through the woods to the diner, including a part where we're just watching the girls walk and banter for like 45 seconds as they're like walking through the woods and talking about how long it's taking to get to this diner, right? So half a mile and at least 45 seconds of walking that includes this indeterminate period where they feel like they're lost in the woods, right? That's how long it takes to get from their spot in the woods to the diner, okay? They get to the diner, Toxic from Britney Spears starts playing, and they're dancing on the table or whatever. Okay.
Also, I just want to point out, who the fuck would walk through the woods and not like along the road?
Walk out to the road and go along the road. I know. Listen, I know. Okay. Toxic starts playing. They got on the dance table and start dancing. Then Cassandra Webb shows up. Then this order is important. Then Ezekiel shows up, and Ezekiel attacks the girls, stabs Madam Webb, and she precogs and resets the scene. So that's what happens in sort of timeline A, okay? In timeline B, where we're following Cassandra Webb, she arrives to the spot in the woods where the girls were, She looks for the girls and discovers, oh, they walked along this path. She follows this half-mile path that took however long, right? What would 10 minutes to walk half a mile, 15 minutes to walk half a mile through the woods? Like,
that's timeline A, right? Like,
yeah. And so she follows this path. She's walking and she follows this path. She arrives to the diner while Toxic by Britney Spears is playing on the radio, watching the girls dance. And then Ezekiel shows up and she fights and Ezekiel stabs her. Okay. This is all timeline A. This is timeline A from Cassandra Webb's perspective. Cassandra Webb zoops back to where she was. Okay. And this is the detail that is wild to me. The trigger is Toxic by Britney Spears, because in the cab that she stole, which is idling behind her in the woods, she is listening to the beginning of the song that will get the girls to dance on the table. Toxic by Britney Spears, a 3-minute pop song. Okay. She's listening to it and she doesn't understand her powers yet. So she's looking around. She's like, what? I'm supposed to be dead. What happened? Why am I hearing Toxic by Britney Spears? And then she realizes, oh, I need to go save the girls. So this time she gets in her car, drives out into the road, drives over to the diner, right? And I'm thinking the whole time, oh, this makes sense. This doesn't really make sense. This doesn't make any sense.
So this makes sense in the moment, because the DJ on the radio says this song is going to be huge, implying that the time that it's playing in the diner is a second instance of the song. However, it is directly contradicted by the fact that she like loses the song for half a second and like panics, as if her listening to that particular version of the song, like that particular play of the song, is important to the plot. And apparently that's the same play of the song, which, to your point, makes absolutely no fucking sense.
Yeah, this is the part that I was like, what on earth is happening? So this, because then what happens is she goes out to the road, she drives along the road, which you would think would be faster than walking through the woods to the diner that is on the road, and she arrives at the diner after Ezekiel is already there, and it drives into the diner with the taxi cab to hit him with her car. One of multiple instances, by the way, where this guy gets hit by a fucking car. Okay, relatable. But anyway, so now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, wait, hold on one second. In timeline A, where she's starting from the same point. In timeline A, she was able to walk through the woods and get to the diner before Ezekiel, but in timeline B, she drove along the road and gets there after Ezekiel. How does this make sense? And how on earth would she be able to get that far inside of the 3-minute window of playing Toxic? My mind, if it was any other movie, oh God, why would I care? You know what I mean? This is so dumb. But it's about her precognition abilities. It drove me crazy. It drove me wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing about this, she keeps driving the car. She drives the car through a building.
Not only that, but this is when she, drives to a motel where no one blinks an eye at the banged up license plateless taxi cab, right? Stays there for the night, right? Like, I actually thought the diner thing was a clever use of those precog powers, right? Like, although also it was before I understood what they were supposed to be, and I assumed that like she was like snapping back, like literally like manipulating time or something. Apparently not. Drives them back, gets her partner Ben Parker to pick like her what's it called, her ambulance,
her kidnap victims. Well, like what else are they at this point?
He believes her, and then it makes sense that the kids are like, no, she's on the up and up, right? Like, believes her, goes and takes her to his pregnant sister's house, right? Where we can't, for whatever reason, know the name of the baby or the guy that he's in love with, because, I was like, someone is going to like say like May or Peter and be like, at the wink at the camera, right? Like, but doesn't happen, right? And then she drives said taxi cab to the airport, parks it there, takes a plane to Peru for a week.
Just to the jungles of Peru.
Meets what looks like a Frenchman, who is like, I waited for you. Spirit throws her into the water. And then, like, that's it, I guess.
It's actually that part was honestly even worse because the whole beginning, which was wild from the get-go and justified later. I was actually glad that they solved this plot point. The part where you see her mom, because it starts very tight on her mom looking at a spider web, and you're like, oh, interesting. Oh, I guess that we're in the past. This is probably like her mom. She's researching spider shit or whatever. And then it zooms out and shows that she's pregnant. She's like 9 months pregnant. And I'm like, what are you doing in the middle of the Amazon at 9 months pregnant? This is wild. So she's in the fucking Amazon, and they do this whole thing about how like, oh, there's a special spider that no one's ever been able to find, but like we're so deep and so far from civilization that now we might actually get closer than ever. It's been so hard to find this spider. It's been so hard to find this thing. There are a secret tribe of people who have spider powers here or whatever. And then her paramedic daughter, who has presumably lived her entire life in New York City, shows up to the Amazon, and inside of a week retraces her footsteps to the exact place where her mother died, I guess. And it's just like, uh, uh okay. And then the Frenchman shows up like behind her like fucking Batman and is like, I've been waiting for you to arrive. It's like, has this motherfucker just been sitting on this fucking log for 40 years? Like, come on.
Well, clearly he like went and became a normal person and took off like the spider clothes, right? Like this. Also, that part of that was like weird to me too. Is like these spider people, they show up to save her life, but like let's Ezekiel, shoot people and like steal a spider, which is I assume where they were shooting. I was like, oh, we can't let Ezekiel steal our sacred spider or whatever, right? Like, and I was assuming there was gonna be some cleverness there. No, this like they just like they only show up in time to kind of sort of save Cassie Webb, right? They also kind of like, again, not a huge deal, but kind of yada over how that worked, right? It's like, did like one of these legendary spider people like show up at a hospital with a baby and be like, here, and then like leave, right? Like,
yeah, I guess, I don't know. Fuck.
And showed up with like, I guess with her mother's notes and documentation proving that this was an American child and needed to be like returned to America, right? Like, and entered into the foster system, right? Like, imagine like a random like, look, this might be a little sensitive.
Border is in crisis, Mango.
No, okay. This is the point I'm going to make, actually, right? Like, imagine you like have you're a poor South American that wants a better life in America for their child, right? Some pregnant white woman dies, and like you're like, oh, maybe I can convince the police that like my child is in fact this pregnant woman's child. He's going to foster care in America, right? Like that's the thing that you would assume that somebody would check, right? Like that this isn't some sort of like, I don't want to call it like an immigration scam, essentially, right? Like who would take it on faith that like this child was just like there because Ezekiel kills all of the other people, right? Like, he kills all the other researchers, right? Like, maybe if like they saved one of the other guys and like handed her like, this is an easy problem to solve, right? Like, one of the researchers didn't die. He just kind of like got hit in the shoulder and went down, but he comes to, and the spider person hands Cassie to the researcher, and like, he goes back to America. He's like, fuck this. I can't take care of her baby. Have fun in foster care. Right. Like, like that would all like make some, like that would solve the problem. And it's like, 10 seconds of like plot, but like, it's not there. Right. It just kind of like, she made her way back to America and then she came home, I guess. And
then you know what she did? You know what the first thing she did when she came back to America is? Chat, I need what is the answer? Okay, what is the first thing? She has just discovered her spider powers, okay? And it's a woman who has stolen a taxi cab in order to save these girls' lives, okay? She's stashed them at Uncle Ben's house because, apparently this is also the story of Peter Parker's birth for no fucking reason, okay? What is the first thing that she does when she gets back to the United States? 2 years after 9/11. Hello, American Customs. I'm a spider person from deep in the Amazon. Here's a baby. This is normal.
To be fair to the movie, that was in 1973.
Yeah, to be fair, 2 years after 9/11. Oh my God. You know what's funny about that? They don't even mention they don't mention 9/11. They don't mention the Patriot Act. They don't mention any of that stuff. It's just like a 2003 nostalgia movie. You would think that a whole plot point of this movie is they're using this NSA hacking
I was
to track people or whatever. They're not even gonna make a reference to that.
Like whoever the woman is behind the computer, I expected her to be Edwina Snowden or something like that, right?
Oh, okay. Here's the first thing that she did when she comes back to the United States. She goes to Ben Parker's house. She steals an ambulance and then uses that car to once again hit Ezekiel with a car. But this time she hits her with an ambulance.
Hold on. You missed an important step. She picks up her stolen taxi cab from the airport and drives it to Uncle Ben's house. No, she then steals the ambulance in the exact same way she stole the taxi cab.
Oh my God, there's even one more part to this. She goes to Uncle Ben's house where they are not at Uncle Ben's house because May Parker is pregnant with Peter Parker, obviously.
Mary Parker.
And I'm sorry, Mary Parker, not May Parker. Mary Parker is pregnant with Peter, and her water breaks, okay? And she does the bit. She goes, either I just peed myself or my water just broke, right? They have a whole thing with Ben shuffling all the girls into the car. He's going to drive Mary to the hospital, right? This is why Ben Parker's not there.
Oh, no.
Okay.
You just pointed something out to me. Everybody knows that Cassie's coming back that day. And no one, leaves her a note, right?
That's true. Cassie shows up to Uncle Ben's house, and you want to know how she knows where they went? She sneaks around the side of the house, peers into one of the windows, sees a puddle on the kitchen floor, and intuits that that's Mary Parker's water having been broken. Then she goes and steals the ambulance.
I think it was supposed to be her precog abilities, but they didn't make that clear.
Yeah, I mean, but they show the insert. They show the insert of her looking at the puddle on the kitchen floor. Somebody had to go into the script and shot list and write, Cassie opens the window and sees I don't even know what fluid is that or whatever, and sees the puddle of
semiotic fluid.
The puddle of semiotic fluid on the floor and realizes that they're all going to the hospital because Mary's about to give birth. That's got to be in the script. So someone has to show me the script. I am going to buy the shooting script for Madam Web so that I can flip to this page just to see how they describe this shot. I need to know how they describe it.
Arahe in the chat says, she's real fucking good at stealing cars. I don't think that that's true. She literally just sits in a car. She just literally gets into a car with the keys in the ignition twice, right? And for whatever reason, the tunnel that she drives into, or the park, this is a thing that I don't understand at all, right? She knows where he's gonna, she knows where he's gonna be. She knows where everything's gonna be because of her precognition. That makes sense. Why is there a tunnel that leads to the back of a television screen that she is capable of bursting through with the ambulance, right? She just starts driving fast and to your point about visual language, there's no indication of where she's going, and just she happens to be behind this TV screen that she pops out of and hits fucking Ezekiel with the car, right? The ambulance survives that. She gets the girls in the car and she drives away with Ezekiel Spider-Man hopping, but without webs, just leaping behind her. She has the kids defibrillate the roof of the ambulance to shock him, and that's what takes the ambulance out of commission, I guess. I don't know.
I guess if I'm being I don't think it's that's what takes the ambulance out of commission. I just think the ambulance overheats. If I were a mechanic, here's what I would say. Crashing through the fucking wall and hitting Ezekiel probably cracked her radiator so that she's leaking like
Sure.
cooling fluid or whatever, so that the engine block is going to overheat and she's going to like fuck up her spark plugs and pistons and shit like that. But listen.
Yeah, so
also maybe they zapped the top of the roof and that's what fucked it up. Who knows?
Ryan's saying wait in the chat. I did skip over this. Yes, they shocked the roof with the defibrillator. Yes. Cassie tells the kids to charge with the defibrillator, and they time it so that when Ezekiel lands on the roof, they just like put the paddles against the ceiling and they shock it. How do they not all get shocked? Honestly, I'm thinking that like they necessarily shouldn't get shocked, but I don't think it should transfer through the metal. It goes over the surface. That's like how that's like the lightning strike thing, right? Like,
Yeah, well, so technically speaking, she says don't touch the sides, which I think is a recognition that if you zap the top, it's not just going to be the top, right? It's going to conduct all through the thing. But the only connection to the ground, like the only ground to the metal, to the electric charge, is through rubber tires, right? So there's no way for that.
The rubber tires isn't actually like that's like a misnomer. I know when lightning hits the top of a car, like I don't think electricity. I don't know. This is physics that I don't.
No. I do understand. Part of this is that rubber does conduct electricity, but just has such insanely high resistance that it is considered to be insulated, right? So the idea is a lightning strike. If somebody, like, if I'm wearing sneakers with rubber soles and lightning hits me, the lightning still goes through the rubber. The rubber still conducts the electricity, just because a lightning strike is so many, I guess, joules of electricity. It's not watts or anything like that. It would be joules of energy, right? That it would conduct through the otherwise insulated rubber, right? But the idea is that for most electric shocks, that wouldn't happen, right? That wouldn't conduct. And it is also why, stuff like if I were in a helicopter and you were to drop me onto a set of power lines and I were to grab one power line, I would not be electrocuted, right? Because the resistance of the human body is bigger than the resistance of the wire. This is why like squirrels can run along power lines without getting electrocuted either. But if I were to pull the power line down to the ground on my rubber sole and hit the thing, I would conduct into the ground, because electricity is looking to ground itself, right? It would conduct through me into the ground. And so theoretically, when they charge the top of the car, I don't actually think Ezekiel would take the electric charge. I think just the electricity would be in the metal until it would be like when it would disperse, but it would be like when how like when you get an electric charge and then you hit a ground and you zap yourself. It would be like that, but it would be for like 10,000 volts or however many volts is in a defibrillator. They would step out of the car, and the second their foot touches the ground, and they were touching, I guess, the side, the metal, any of the metal parts of the car, wouldn't they conduct that electricity? Where does the electricity go somewhere?
I think the electricity can't, like, it's not like the ambulance is a battery. It would not, like, the charge would not hold.
That's true.
Hold in the ambulance. It would probably dissipate, but I'm not convinced that it would pass through. But first of all, I don't think that the roof of the ambulance is a single like sheet of metal, right? Like I don't think that's how like cars work.
Oh yeah, that's true. It's not like it's going to like the electricity is going to pass through individual bolts and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think in theory it would have to pass through, like the roof is not the right place to do it. You want to like do it like at a piece where it would wrap around and then like flow up to the outside. But like I also don't think that the metal on the top of an ambulance is probably not the same as the metal on the out.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? That's not one sheet of metal. That's probably two sheets. And if it is, it would have to like, wrap out and around and back up the top, right? Like I just don't think this is how electricity works.
And I also don't think that if Ezekiel were to, whatever. This movie is wild. But do you understand why this movie has broken my brain? My favorite part though, I have to talk about this. Earlier in the movie, there's a part where they talk about the fire at the docks, okay? She goes to the fire at the docks, a guy dies, and she sees it with her precog powers. And I thought she was going to save his life, but nope, he just gets to stay dead. Get fucked. He's black, I guess, okay? So they mentioned as a background detail.
That's supposed to be. I think that's supposed to be your like Uncle Ben moment, right? Like, you know.
Yeah. That's that. Okay, you know what? That's fair. This guy that we have met for one previous scene, right? They mention that the fire is at a fireworks factory and it could go up at any minute, right? And I was like, oh, whoa! It's such a Chekhov's gun. I was like, you don't say the words fireworks factory if the fireworks don't fucking explode in the fire at the dock at the fucking fireworks factory, right? But no, then it doesn't happen. I was sitting there, I was like, this movie is giving me such blue balls. Why the fuck would they say that this is at a fireworks factory or a fireworks warehouse or whatever it is, if they're not going to blow up the fireworks warehouse?
It is the most fucking like what's the word, like you know, subversion of expectations. Like it's like there's a fire at the fireworks factory, and like Cassie's words, he's like, oh no, I'm having problems, and then he gets hit with a truck, right? Like
They don't even show the fire. The fire is fine. She's just giving CPR to a guy on the like out front or whatever. I was just like, what on earth? Okay, but then honestly, this movie is genius. Okay, I've come around on it. Greatest planning and payoff of my fucking life. But then they're talking about, we have to beat Ezekiel. He's chasing us in these cars. And then she realizes, oh my God, the ambulance just broke down and we're near the fireworks factory.
I was gonna say, so how did they get to the fireworks factory, right? Like, did they just happen to be next to the fireworks factory? Like,
yeah, I guess so. By the way, the Pepsi Cola fireworks factory, because there's a big, giant neon light on top of the fireworks factory that says Pepsi Cola. Technically, I think it's a warehouse. I keep calling it a factory. Whatever. It's a warehouse, right?
So a couple of things here. One, I want to point out that like early in the movie, she like falls into the water. This awakens her powers, and it does a bunch of like little like things that get connected to later. One of these is the S from the PepsiCo factory. I thought that was neat, except then the S isn't what fucking falls on Ezekiel, it's the P. For like no reason. She keeps looking at the S.
Yeah, and so they go through the fireworks factory where they're intentionally setting off all fireworks. She basically hands them a bunch of flares and she goes, throw these in open crates of fireworks. And the idea is that she's using her precog powers to know when the random fireworks are going off so that she can, tell the girls to dodge, or she eventually picks up this like flange of metal and is using it like Captain America's shield to like protect them from like stray fucking fireworks. Okay. And as a part of all of this, the Pepsi Cola sign at the top of the building, because she calls in to get them a helicopter or something, to get them off the roof.
She precogs it saving the girls, and instead Ezekiel bends a firework into the helicopter, which explodes.
Yeah, the firework, it really does look like I didn't understand. I was like, did he just like hit it? Is he just like smacking it out of the sky? Because the firework is shooting at Ezekiel, and then I guess maybe it just bounces off of him and shoots up somehow. Yeah, it looks like he deflects it somehow, but I was just like, I don't understand. And he's in this black suit against the black night sky, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And then it shoots into the helicopter, and the helicopter blows up, and there's like a gigantic fiery explosion.
I was like, oh, so this is when it's gonna reset. She's gonna have to fix that, and she doesn't. She like literally called in that helicopter just to kill them, right? Like it didn't serve any purpose.
Oh my God. I didn't think about it like that. Yeah, calls in the helicopter just to kill them. Yeah. And then Ezekiel puts all three girls in mortal danger at once. And he's like, you can't all save them at once. And then she's like, really? Try me. And I guess she astrally projects through the time. Like she is running 3 separate timelines where she goes to help all 3 girls at once, which apparently works, but then Ezekiel just attacks her directly because she's right in front of him. And obviously that works. She doesn't defend herself from that at all. And then she knows that the S from the Pepsi Cola sign is about to collapse. And so she maneuvers him to where the S is going to be. The S traps him, but does not kill him. long enough that she can deliver a one-liner.
It wasn't the S. It was the P. It was the P from the fucking sign. Because I was
no. The S is what locks him in behind the sign, and then the whole thing collapses, and he falls to the ground. And the P from the Pepsi, because remember, this is Disney's, Marvel's, Sony's, Madam Web, a Spider-Man story brought to you by Pepsi Cola. The P from Pepsi is the real superhero because it falls on Ezekiel and crushes him to death at the end of it. So and then she falls into the river, I guess, at that point.
Yeah, it falls into the river, which breaks her spine and also a firework blinds her, I guess, because So the thing I wanted to get to first is that after she's rescued from the water, right? She goes to the hospital, right? And then she goes home. Or no, she didn't go to the hospital. Ben looks over and is like, "You're fine." She has her first deja vu moment. But then he goes to when we find out is his sister's baby shower, which he brings her to as the plus one, and not the person he's in love with, right? Like this person that he has already told Cassie is the person that he is with and he loves. Instead, he brings Cassie. Also, Ben references her at Mary calls Cassie his partner, which is way too ambiguous. Because it's his ambulance partner.
Because they're paramedics together. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, the reason the Pepsi thing sticks is because he hands her a Pepsi with the label out. Right? Classic product placement. It's like, what? I can't have a beer? It's like, standard protocol. Can't have a drink 24 hours after almost drowning. It's like, is that a protocol? I don't know. It's like, they didn't even bother to make it make sense.
Honestly, my favorite thing about the Pepsi that she hands him is it uses the Pepsi logo. It's a period accurate 2003 Pepsi. Honestly, the set design of this movie is I was surprised at how great it was. It's sort of like, how when you watch a movie that's now, but it's set in the 70s and they're all using period appropriate kind of cars and shit like that. It was like that, but for Pepsi cans.
Yeah, I mean, also, so there were a couple of these things. The other big one I saw, there was a Calvin Klein product placement. Do you know where that was? Did you catch this?
No.
This was what's the black girl, the one that turns into Afro Spider Woman, right?
Okay.
The tops of her underwear were prominently out with Calvin Klein on them the entire time that she was on screen.
Yeah, because she was dressed like Avril Lavigne. I felt like I pinned this. She was Avril Lavigne. Okay. These are all 2000s female pop stars. Anya, who is the undocumented immigrant, was clearly Jennifer Lopez or maybe any other Hispanic, Shakira or something like that. And then I guess Sydney Sweeney's character was Christina Aguilera.
No, I thought she was Britney Spears. She had the schoolgirl outfit.
Britney Spears, yeah, she had that. Well, I thought Christina Aguilera also had that. That schoolgirl outfit was the thing that she was wearing. I was like, all they did was just pull from early 2000s hot. Yeah. Well, listen, I guess Sydney Sweeney is really hot. I did not realize that was her, but anyway, I was
early 2000s jailbait, I guess, right? The actresses are all adults, but it's it's very weird because they're all supposed to be teenagers, right?
Yeah, and I guess that's, I don't know. I guess that's a real thing.
I do want to say, Lou in the chat says that defibrillators are 360 joules, lightning is 1 billion. Thank you for fact checking us, Lou. It's much appreciated.
It is very much appreciated. Yeah. Oh my God. Oh yeah. There was also also a lot of for instance, there was a moment when she goes to strip the license plates off her car. The parking lot she drives into has a big thing for Beyonce's solo album. Right. This was right when Beyonce went solo from Destiny's Child. There's a bunch of stuff like that. They really made use. I have never seen this before, but they really made use of their early 2000s pop culture. I'm kind of wild to think that this is when we were growing up in the 90s, right? This would have been a movie set in the 70s.
Yeah. Also, the thing that's weird about this movie is I was expecting there to be a moment where they this is where the three of them get their powers, right? Their blood mixes with Cassie's or with Ezekiel's or something, right? Or the poison reacts differently with them because they she I don't know, healing powers out of them. Nope. just like I guess at some point in the future they all happen to independently get spider powers in a way that like isn't explained yet, which I guess is fine. But I was just waiting the whole movie for like that other shoe to drop, right? Like, you know, I thought at the beginning of the movie that at some point there was going to be a time skip in the middle of the movie, and like like I guess this is funny because this pairs with the Flash and
Spider-Verse.
yeah,
Yep.
right, where it's like I guess Spider-Man can change the future and the Flash can't, right? Like these are the rules.
Mm-hmm.
It's in they live in NYC. How hard could it be to get spider powers? I don't know. You know, Peter Parker gets born in this movie, right? So like presumably like something happens there, right? Like,
I do want to say, I will say one good thing about this movie. I think this decision was dumb on like a creative level, and it is wild to me that they went so far with it. But the execution of Cassie Webb being Ben Parker's partner, and Ben Parker is just a good guy. They have banter. She comes off terribly. She is like a Karen. I describe her as a Karen in like the post because that's what she felt like. She just felt like as if like she stepped onto set one day. She read her first line as like entitled and mean as possible, and everybody was like, perfect, give me more of that. Right? Like, it's just crazy the way she delivers her lines. But Ben, whatever his name is, Schwartzman or something, is a fantastic Ben Parker, and it is neat getting to see a movie where Ben Parker does something other than die. I like Uncle Ben as a character. This
Adam
is
Scott
a neat.
is his name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Adam Scott, not Ben Schwartzman.
Ben Schwartzman is the guy who plays Sonic, right?
Yeah. Adam Scott. They're both in Parks and Rec, which is why I confused. One is John Ralphio, the other is
Ben. His name is Ben in Parks and Rec as well.
Oh, his name is Ben in Parks and Rec, and it's Ben in this. Yeah,
Ben Wyatt. Ben Wyatt.
Yeah, Ben Wyatt in Parks and Rec. That guy. He's great. He's great, and it's dumb. All of this is dumb. Terrible inclusion. Terrible idea, but he's great. It's like the only positive thing I'll say about this movie, besides that it's like really unintentionally funny, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I like this movie better than The Flash.
Wow.
Yeah. I like this movie better than what other fucking movies did we watch?
The Marvels. I probably like this movie better than the Marvels. Had the most unforgivable of sins, which was it was fucking boring. Okay, this movie was not boring.
Orion in the chat says they were like, that guy can really play a Ben.
Oh
man, Lou, you should go watch. If you know what, I don't think you should pay money to watch this movie, but you should watch it when it's like on streaming or like I don't know. Anyway, it was stupid.
How was your week, buddy? Let's talk about it.
Man, so things. Let's talk about the most topical thing first. I went to the Navy Federal Credit Union NHL in the Park series. Essentially, it's an outdoor hockey game in MetLife Stadium, which is why I was in Clifton. I went to the TikTok Diner, which is at least like
famous diner.
Yeah. Beforehand, we were taking my dad. Essentially, it was a combined Christmas birthday gift for him because his birthday was on Friday. We went to that game, which was super fun. The Devil, like I'm lifelong Devils fan. It's funny because MetLife Stadium is across the street from where they used to play in Continental Airlines Arena. Now they play in Prudential Center, the Prudential Center, also colloquially known as the Rock.
Yeah, like 2 blocks from my dad's house.
Yeah, in Newark. But the fun thing was that for all these games, all of the players dress up when they get off the bus. And when it was them versus the Flyers came out all dressed up like Rocky. And the Devils all came out dressed up in like Soprano style tracksuits. Yeah. You should
that's amazing.
You should go what's it called?
Oh my god, that's beautiful. I love that. Honestly, I feel like I should be an NHL person who follows the NHL. I like hockey was have I talked about the podcast? Hockey was like my game when I was a kid. It was like baseball where I was a first baseman. I was really good at baseball. And then I also played hockey until getting new pads every year was really expensive and my family couldn't. And so hockey is like my shit. I really love hockey. Yeah.
No, and there was some cool stuff. There was some less than cool stuff. So one of the big things is like the Jonas Brothers are apparently from New Jersey and big Devils fans, so they played a concert before the game.
Oh my god!
And then between the second and the third intermission, they just like throughout the whole game, they're like, "Stay in your seats for Grammy Award-winning Jonas Brothers, triple platinum artist Jonas Brothers, and turn on the lights on your the flashlights on your phone to show, you know, to really light up the arena." Like 4 people did, and no one was paying attention to them. But so they have they have a goal song, which is "Howl" by Gaslight Anthem. Are you familiar with this at all? The song? I am not. But like whenever they score a goal, they play like a piece of the song, right? But it was pretty cool. Gaslight Anthem was there live. They played a concert between the first and second period. And every time they scored a goal, they ran out on stage and played the anthem song live instead of having it be like the pre-recorded version that they play at the normal games, which I thought was pretty cool. Also, this was the thing. I was like reading about it. It was like, oh, they apparently made their goal song like 2015 to 2016. It's like, I wonder why what was their old goal song? And their old goal song was Rock and Roll by Gary Glitter, which is, I assume, why they replaced it.
Do you like hockey? Was it fun? I find hockey amazingly fun to watch. But it's also a pretty low scoring game like soccer.
Yeah. Not this one. It was 6-3. Like,
whoa, yeah, that's
right?
crazy.
But yes,
the thing I like about hockey is one, it's brutal because people are checking people all the time, all that kind of stuff, and 2, it's graceful. That's what I think. If I were to make a case, okay, for like the aesthetic case for the game of hockey, it is a truly great juxtaposition between brutality and force and like grace, because they are moving fast and they're moving in these huge sweeping, whatever, but then also like somebody gets checked into the boards and it's just like it's awesome. That's what I love about hockey.
Yeah, no, I like it as well. I have found that over the years the game has gotten less hit intensive. I think that's by design. I think that's like a thing that they intentionally have put into the game. I know that like they changed the rules, I think in like the mid-aughts to make like the enforcer as kind of like an informal position to be like a thing that doesn't exist anymore. But I enjoy watching the game. It's I don't know. It's
the thing I also really love about hockey from a game design perspective is power plays. I think are incredibly awesome. It creates like real moments of tension and drama.
For people at home that do not know, when a player commits a foul, they go into the penalty box for 2 minutes, and they play down a man up to 2 if you can stack penalties, and then like if both teams fouled, you can be 4-on-4. And it's generally for 2 minutes, or until the opposing team scores a goal. And that's the power play, right? Is when you are up 1 or 2 men.
Yeah, so there's this tension between aggression is good. You can use aggression to, like trade possession. If like one team has the puck or whatever, you check somebody like hard, you can probably steal possession, but it can also backfire on you, right? Because you can get fouled for it and you can get put in the penalty box. And so I think all of that is just like really like an interesting push pull as like a spectator. It reminds me, actually, it's funny. I would probably make the case that the game design of League of Legends is built on this principle, because that's how kills work in League of Legends, right? It's not just that your opponent is 300 gold up, it's that they get to influence the map as a power play when they kill you. And I think that, and this is why like acing a team in something like League of Legends or an Overwatch or whatever is like such a powerful monumental thing. Yeah, being able to, completely own the map for however long that translates to is pretty huge.
Yeah, and also there's like the crazier version of this, which is when like if it's towards the end of the game and you're down by like 1 or 2 goals and you think you can close the distance, you can pull the goalie and essentially give yourself like a 6-on-5 power play. Although that leaves your net wide open, and so like 90% of the times when I've seen it, like the other team manages to get the puck back and like long shots it into the goal, which is also always a great moment.
Yeah, that kind of stuff, super fun.
But yeah, no, hockey. It was a super fun watch. It was a neat game. and like they have special stuff. Also, it was funny because like I don't like Philadelphia like constitutionally, but like uh, they had some good moments because it's Gritty and the NJ Devil are the mascots, right? And they had some stuff running around, but like they had this great moment where like Gritty and the NJ Devil both threw like a cake at like a guy in a Rangers jersey.
That's actually really funny.
Yeah, no, it was super fun. But yeah, no, it was a great thing. It was also fun just thing to do for the novelty, right? It was like an outdoor game. It was cold, but like it was dealable with. I've been in MetLife Stadium a bunch. I've been to a bunch of Giants games. But yeah, it was a fun time. Otherwise, I started playing Void Stranger, just because it was a fun game that I could play, or it was a game I could play on the road. I get the impression that this is like one of these games that's like simple on the surface, but actually has like 10,000 layers of secrets. And so I'm not deep enough into it to find that yet. But those are the big things in my week. Although I do want to wrap around to, we were talking about maybe getting to Helldivers. Something that happened this week, I think as a result of Helldivers, was Starship Troopers re-entered the Twitter discourse. I don't know if you
Oh
saw
my
it.
god, I hated so much of this, but yes, I understand.
Do you want to talk about your week, or do you want to talk about Starship Troopers? I'll let...
Oh man, we almost should do. I feel like we should do like a Starship Troopers episode. There's a lot there.
Yeah, so the thing I want to say is that like I'm going to start listening to Heinlein's Starship Trooper on tape, because my understanding of it is that the source material is, critics will call it fascistic, but it is, if the movie is supposed to be like the propaganda satire version, like the book is a what's the word, a sincere embracing of like civil, becoming a soldier to like defend your country type thing. And there was discourse all over the internet, but we don't have to go into that now if you don't want to. But
I honestly should also do it. I my thing that I hate about the discourse with like Heinlein and stuff like that is essentially people are just using fascist to say bad guy. Like you can have essentially a liberal democracy that is a bad, like a bad system, right?
Right.
Heinlein is not describing a fascist state or system, and neither is Starship Troopers the movie. It's using fascist iconography, and I would say that it is still a satire. It's making fun of this whole like system. Paul Verhoeven talks about this or whatever, but like it's not fascism, and that's like it's the kind of thing that is just like boiling. It's like I don't know, it's like calling George Bush a Nazi, right?
Yeah.
You're saying it because it means bad, not because it is an accurate descriptor of who he is, or like what he's about.
Fascism as an ideology, which is like relatively short-lived, and like we don't have to go into like the
we don't have to go into that. We could do an episode. I love Starship Troopers the movie. I actually think that's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun in the way that and like I don't know, whatever. Maybe we'll talk about it later, because I do want to talk about some stuff. I have been getting into Humankind. After we talked about it last week on the podcast, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give it the real college try. Let's go back to Humankind and like actually do it. And it actually like hooked me this time. When I started playing before, I was a little overloaded by the systems, and I honestly just spent about 10 minutes browsing some like noob question threads. They're just like, what are some things I should know? And people just gave a couple of like answers or whatever. I just spent 10 minutes like reading those, and it just helped orient kind of my sort of thought process when like entering into my new Humankind game. I played a game extremely deeply where I basically won. I won pretty quickly. And then I started up a second game where I also won pretty quickly. Both games were mostly the thing I didn't realize was I was playing on like beginner easy mode basically, but I hadn't seen the difficulty toggle when I was setting up the games. I thought the difficulty was in, because one of the things that you do is you are playing against like AI opponents, right? And you can set the levels for the AI components or the opponents to be expert, advanced, or whatever. I thought that was effectively the difficulty slider, but I was effectively playing expert AI on beginner difficulty, and I was like, oh, I understand why I'm just like running away with these games. So I now started a third game where I'm doing pretty well, but I have chosen to take a pretty interesting kind of path with my like cultures or whatever, because I was like the third or fourth person to the in in humankind. When you advance from age to age, it's one of the things I like about it. You choose a culture for that age only, and when you move to the next stage, you get to choose from the next band of cultures. And cultures are exclusive, so two players cannot have the same culture. So when I moved into the next phase from whatever it was, the classical era to the medieval era, or maybe it was like from the ancient era to the classical era. Um, so my favorite, the cultures that I was kind of gunning for had both been taken, and I was like, man, what do I do? And I realized that I could essentially give myself a do-over, because if you take the Polynesian culture, you can sail without taking damage from open seas, and humankind has a feature where you can have a new world, right, that gets discovered, which is an empty continent with no major civilizations on there. So I am now on mission, take over a whole continent by myself, 2 eras before anyone else will be able to reach this continent, basically. And we're gonna see how that goes. It's working out okay so far.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to love about humankind, and after playing it for a while, I just feel like, boy, it tickles a couple of the things that I really want out of some of these Civ games. For instance, being clever with armies is really fun. Because one of the things that defines all of these games, I think these are Amplitude Studios, because Endless Legend and Endless Space also work this way. You fight your battles on the map, right? So you have an army, your army is 4 units, and kind of thing. But when you clash into another army, you get to place your guys on the map, and there's all these like bonuses for like attacking or whatever. And there's just like a lot of like neat stuff that I was able to do with like unique units. Like one of the cultures that I was playing on one of my games has archers who take no fire penalty for indirect fire, so you can shoot over like mountains or whatever, which makes no sense, obviously. But it's just like it's like fun to abuse that kind of stuff, and do I don't know, just like do that kind of stuff. Humankind has been most of what I've been playing. I've been playing a little bit of World of Warcraft, just like playing all and stuff like that. I essentially have made Bairn the perfect. He's item level 488, and he could be higher, obviously. Like I could theoretically be like item level 490 something if I was like mythic rating or whatever. But like for my purposes, I have like 2 upgrades that I could get, and the chances of getting them are so wildly low that it's kind of not even worth my time to be playing Baron anymore. So I've been running around on Dazanji, my prot paladin, or my everything paladin, because I've been healing and DPSing on him too. So it's just like a mix of all of those things, all that stuff.
Very cool. Yeah, what I do, I went and I did the weekly earlier today and some quests because I'm trying to like max out the sniffin or the lift, whatever they're called, the
Oh yeah, the Niffin.
Niffin, yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm probably gonna play some more Street Fighter. I just haven't because I was not in at my computer. Yeah. And then in a couple of weeks, the new Crusader Kings expansion comes out, and so I'm gonna check that out. And on March 4th, I believe is what it is. And maybe we'll check out Helldivers. That does look interesting.
I do want to see if Helldivers is the real deal. I love this archetype of game. But who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there have been people that have been interested in it that we know. So maybe we'll check a look, as Devolver people like to say. Yeah. I feel like Buddy is downplaying how much he has been talking about Helldivers. Is this true?
I have been hearing about Helldivers from people in my sort of sphere. By a bunch of it's sort of like Darktide. It's sort of like that Darktide niche, which is funny because other friends of mine have gotten into Darktide and they've been like, "You should come play Darktide," and I'm like, "Fuck," because I really love that game. But I think the thing that I'm interested in with Helldivers, nothing has hit a third person niche for this for a long time, basically since Anthem, actually, as an unapologetic Anthem enjoyer, and Mass Effect enjoyer also. Mass Effect was also a third person PvE squad shooter. My hope is that Helldivers can hit a similar sort of, kind of feel for the way that those played. And I don't know what we can do with them. I wonder if there's like Anthem private servers. Could you imagine if I could go play Anthem right now?
I don't think so. I think EA locked all that code down, and I don't think anybody cared enough to make a private server. Like you were like literally the only person I think that was like very into Anthem.
You know what's funny? I mentioned Anthem the other day in my Akupara like work Slack. I was like, God, I miss Anthem, and I like it. That thread took off. Like everybody was like, oh my God, I loved Anthem. I always, I wish they added more content. I was so excited for more content, right? Like all this stuff. I was just like, man, where the fuck were you Anthem enjoyers years ago?
Yeah. Well, there was that one game that we played for a little while that was like also third person. It was like kind of like Anthem Light.
I know what you're talking about. God, what the fuck is that game called?
Given that neither of us can remember, is maybe why it it didn't stick with us. It was like by Square, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Square Enix. It was Outriders.
Oh yeah, that sounds about right.
I wonder whatever happened to that game. Outriders Complete Edition. I guess it's done. They've finished it.
Is this the right thing? I guess it is.
I don't. It looks kind. I hate these screenshots. These are such bad screenshots.
No, that's definitely it because it's Technomancer, Pyromancer, Trickster, and Devastator.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. I guess this was it. Yeah, I liked Outriders, and I remember saying like, "Oh, I beat the main campaign. I saw what the grind was. I was like, no thanks, but I'll come back for more like later." And then I never did. So
yeah, it's on Game Pass.
It's on Game Pass
for what it's worth. Man. Also, I just remember the shooting up feeling super good in that game, right? Like,
yeah, that was a game that had this paradigm that I like, but you don't like, which is like the idea that shooting is sort of like the downtime filler between using big, powerful abilities, right? Which I don't think is the way that you like these shooters to sort of run.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that like both Anthem and Outriders, like if you want it to be like that, then you want to have a bigger and more varied set of abilities, which I don't recall Outriders having, right? Like like Diablo works because like there's a filler ability, but it's like one of your like 6, and like there's like also like a dozen different ways to go with it. And I actually don't particularly like Diablo 4 the way it goes. I think it's like a little too limited. Whereas I like every once in a while I go back to Path of Exile and like, oh, this is neat, and then drop it because it's too complicated. But or too itemized maybe is the thing. Like you can grind for a lot of things, which like makes the game like kind of endless in that upgrade way, but also like kind of hard to like do like build work because it's so dependent on random chance, right? Like
yeah.
We've talked about this before. Like one of the things I like doing is kind of like making an off meta build and making it work. And like if you can't do that if there aren't enough options for it, and you can't do that if it's harder to do if it's too hard to like squeeze into the build, right? Like in order to get there. And so nothing has really scratched my itch there for a little while. Although I bought, what was this called? Last Epoch maybe, but I haven't played it yet. Which is another Diablo style game, but with like, each of the heroes is a particular character, and so it's like locked, which is not my favorite way of doing things. Essentially the characters are gender and like body locked.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, what else have I done? Have I done anything particularly compelling this week? Otherwise, I don't think so. I haven't watched anything. I don't think. You watch anything particularly good? I watched more episodes of Clone Wars, which
I have been watching something particularly good, which we should talk about. I'm watching the Venture Brothers. I bought the Venture Brothers complete series on a DVD, which came out last year, because the final movie, Radiant is the Heart of the Baboon, came out, and it ends like this thing. I have so much to say about Venture Brothers. Is so good. There are some jokes in Venture Brothers that are so funny. I and I haven't watched it in a long time, so I've forgotten them. Like the other day, I just burst out laughing at like the dumbest joke because I had just forgotten it. I just like didn't remember it, and it was so good. The Venture Brothers is truly a transcendent piece of media. It's probably the best show. I think it's like the best. Man, I don't know. It's maybe the best show ever written. I think I would make the case that I think it's the best show. Like the best television show of all time or whatever, but it would be hard to like actually make that. It's certainly my favorite. For a long time, my favorites have kind of like waffled between a million different things. You know, Community was for a long time, Kroll Show or whatever else, but just like, man, going back to Venture Brothers, God, this show is so fucking good. It's so fucking smart. There's so many things in here that just pay off in ways that are just I feel like I'm never gonna have had watching Venture Brothers ever again, and that's a unique thing. That's a unique thing that not a lot of television delivers on. So yeah,
Very cool. Yeah. Yeah. I don't really have anything else to talk about unless you do and you want to.
I guess we're done. So yeah.
All right. Well, if you'd like to email us about any of the things we talked about on this program or anything else, you can email us at derpsplaygames@gmail.com or podcast@derpsplaygames.com. You can follow us on twitch.tv/derpsplaygames or youtube.com/derpsplaygames where these go out live. That's everything. Rate, review us on wherever you find podcasts. Links are all in the description. Buddy, you have anything you're looking to promote?
I have nothing that I'm looking to promote right
In which case, I will say until next time, dear listeners.
Until next time, loyal listeners.